You ever meet someone who seems 10 years older than their age the moment they walk into a room? Not because they look older, but because they carry themselves like someone who learned the rules too early. The careful jokes, the quiet readiness, the way they manage everyone else's emotions before anyone even asks. Maybe it's you, maybe it's someone you love. And here's the uncomfortable part. That premature poise isn't maturity. It's a childhood emergency response, one that follows people for life. What looks like being wise for your age is often a survival skill and a form of unpaid labor. Stay with me, because once you see the psychology behind it, you can't unsee it. Growing up too fast isn't a moral failing. It's a strategy. When a child's world doesn't provide steady care, emotional safety, predictability, room to be messy, the nervous system adapts. Not dramatically, quietly, efficiently. The child borrows adulthood to stabilize what shouldn't have been unstable in the first place. These kids learn to borrow adulthood and never return the receipts. And that adaptation doesn't show up one way. It shows up in recognizable patterns, profiles that feel eerily familiar once you see them. Let's start with the first. There's the little archivist. Picture a child who remembers everything. Not birthdays and holidays, but the tone shifts, the dates of arguments, which moods are safe and which ones mean danger. They know exactly when to speak and when to disappear. They're observant, polite, quietly capable. And inside, they keep a meticulous filing system of emotions. Yours, theirs, everyone's. The psychology here is simple and brutal. Memory equals control. When adults are inconsistent, the child becomes the historian. If you can remember what caused the last rupture, maybe you can prevent the next one. Hypervigilance turns into competence. Anxiety turns into preparation. As adults, these people are organized, loyal, and deeply reliable. They are also exhausted by their own awareness. Asking for help feels foreign, maybe even irresponsible. They often carry the unspoken belief that if they stop tracking everything, something bad will happen. If this sounds familiar, ask yourself, whose emotional records are you still keeping, and who's keeping yours? Then there's the silent manager. You know them. You felt the room settle when they walk in. A tense dinner, a raised voice, an awkward pause, and somehow, without announcing it, the atmosphere shifts. A joke lands, the subject changes, the storm passes. This person learned early that safety wasn't about being loud, it was about regulation. They read emotional weather like a second language. They smooth edges instinctively, not for praise, but for peace. Psychologically, this comes from growing up around volatility. When emotions were unpredictable, the child learned to become the thermostat. If they could keep the room calm, they could breathe. As adults, they're emotionally intelligent, empathetic, and low drama. They're also the ones who apologize for existing in someone else's irritation. They don't ask, "What do I feel?" They ask, "What does this room need?" And here's the thing. These patterns don't just organize emotions. They start organizing relationships, then responsibilities, eventually entire lives. Which brings us to the fixer. The fixer doesn't wait for things to fall apart. They intervene early. They smooth, they repair. They have a plan, a backup plan, and a way to make everyone feel okay again. If there's tension, they'll resolve it. If there's conflict, they'll absorb it. If something breaks, they'll take responsibility, even when it wasn't theirs. This comes from a childhood where harmony was fragile and conditional. Peace had to be maintained. Being useful wasn't a personality trait, it was protection. Underneath the generosity is a quiet equation. If I'm useful, I won't be abandoned. As adults, fixers are indispensable. They're also trapped in relationships where their value is measured by what they provide. Rest feels undeserved, saying no feels dangerous, and resentment quietly builds because the help was never really optional. And then there's the over-responsible hero. This one goes deeper. This is the child who grew up believing that being in charge was the only way to survive. They took on adult responsibilities early. Emotionally, practically, sometimes financially, and learned that competence was armor. They don't just handle pressure, they expect it. As adults, they're dependable, driven, and admired. They're also terrified of dropping the ball. They say, "I've got it," even when they're drowning. They confuse self-worth with endurance. Burnout isn't a surprise here. It's built into the job description. What all these profiles share isn't weakness, it's intelligence under pressure. These strategies worked. They kept the child safe. That's the part we have to honor. But here's the catch. A survival strategy that never gets updated becomes a cage. Which brings us to the part most videos rush and get wrong. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about loosening the grip of an old survival script, one that did its job but never got told the danger was over. Start by naming the pattern without judgment, not as an identity, as a habit. I default to fixing. I manage emotions. I overcarry responsibility. Naming it separates you from the strategy. Then try something small and uncomfortable. Tell one small truth, not the polished version, not the one that sounds reasonable, and don't rush to explain it. Let the silence answer you. Finally, practice sharing weight, not dramatically, quietly. Let someone help without earning it first. Let responsibility be distributed instead of hoarded. To the people who love someone like this, gratitude is nice, but better is asking, clearly and repeatedly, "What do you need?" and meaning it. So which one sounded like you? Maybe more than one. Most people are hybrids. If a line stuck with you, leave it in the comments. And if you want more work like this, the kind that doesn't flatten human experience into labels, consider subscribing. You didn't grow up too fast because you wanted to. You did it because you had to. And understanding that is the beginning of being allowed to be a kid again at your own pace.